Welcome to Fernweh Insights, where prominent leaders and influencers shaping the industrial and industrial tech sector discuss topics that are critical for executives, boards, and investors. Fernweh Insights is brought to you by Fernweh Group, a firm focused on working with industrial companies to make them unrivaled segment of one leaders. To learn more about Fernweh Group, please visit our website at Fernweh.com.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shekhar Varanasi. I'm the CEO of Fernweh Group. It's welcome to Fernweh Insights. Our guest today is Mr. Bill Johnson, President and CEO of Welbilt, a position that he's held since November 2018. Before joining Welbilt, Bill was the CEO of Chart Industries, which is a global manufacturer of highly engineered equipment for industrial, gas, energy, and biomedical industries. From 2006 to 2016, he held various senior level positions at Dover Corporation, which, as many of you know, is a global industrial company. Before joining Dover, Bill was the president and CEO of Graham Corporation, publicly traded manufacturer of oil refining, petrochemical, and power equipment. And before Graham, he held senior positions at other industrial companies like ESAB and ABB. Bill began his career as a commissioned officer and nuclear engineer in the United States Navy. He holds a BS in ceramic engineering from Alfred University and an MBA from Rollins College. Bill, welcome to the podcast. We're very excited to have you and looking forward to talking to you about a range of things, including your journey at Welbilt, as well as other companies that you worked at.
Thanks, Shekhar. Happy to be here today.
Awesome. So let's start maybe with the most recent role you've held, Bill, which is the CEO of Welbilt. Tell us a little bit about what Welbilt does. Tell us a little bit about the company itself.
Yeah. Welbilt's a public company, about a $1.6 billion public company that's in the food equipment space. It's split between about 60% hot side, which is ovens, grills, fryers, cook and hold cabinets, combi ovens, speed ovens, and then the cold side, which is ice machines, Manitowoc ice machines, is a particular brand, prep tables, and different beverage businesses. We go to market through dealers and buying groups, about 60% general market, and the other 40% is global strategic accounts like McDonald's, Burger King, Chick-fil-A, Yum, those types of brands. So it's in a sale process right now, but we hope to have that finished by the end of the second quarter. So,
tell us a little bit about that the deal, Bill. Bill, as some of our listeners might know, Welbilt was sold to Ali Group from Italy. What was the strategic rationale for the deal? What does it mean for the industry going forward?
Well, it was a deal that came about as after COVID hit. The markets were hit pretty hard, and the restaurant markets were all down. There was a lot of chaos in the marketplace, and the markets are now recovering, but it lended itself to consolidation of some roll-ups. And so Welbilt is being acquired by Ali Group, which has about 80 brands of its own. And the 11 brands that we have, it's a good strategic fit for Ali. Our presence in global strategic accounts, the bigger accounts, like the McDonald's and Chick-fil-A, gives Ali a presence there that they don't have. They're more of a general market type of business. So the combination of the two coming together will create the largest food equipment company in the world.
You mentioned COVID, and obviously COVID created a lot of turbulence in the industry. I remember when COVID hit, a lot of the restaurants shut down. How did that impact your business, Bill? What were some of the challenges you had to face in kind of the near term when COVID hit?
Yeah, so it was a pretty big hit to the entire food equipment space. Every one of our end customers, whether it was in-house dining, casual fine dining, hotels, convenience stores, fast food chains, everybody for the first quarter or two took a tremendous drop, and 50-60% of their revenues dropped, which obviously had an effect on manufacturers of equipment like Welbilt, and our revenues dropped. We had a fairly leveraged balance sheet, so one of the things that we had to really look at was to address our bank covenants to make sure that we had headroom under there, which we did very quickly, and we're able to maintain liquidity, a good liquidity position throughout the whole pandemic as a result of a number of cost containment actions. And our culture is one where we're very family oriented, very friendly environment. And every one of my senior executives and VPs took a voluntary pay cut anywhere from 25 to 50% of their pay for a period of time so that we could keep as many people on the payroll and benefits as possible throughout COVID. And so we were able to keep a lot of people, helping them get by till the pandemic kind of subsided and revenue started to recover a little bit. We had to fight hard. It certainly was not easy. You know, when your revenue drops 50% overnight, you have to do a lot of things that none of us have ever had to do before, because none of us have seen this kind of situation happen. And we had to idle plants, in addition to, just pure safety protocols, making sure everybody was safe as possible and get PPE. You remember back when it first started, it was hard to get masks. It was hard to there was a lot of confusion in terms of what should you be doing and what shouldn't you be doing. And so, we're real proud of the way that our folks fought through it and came back to work, and the industry's now recovered quite a bit. We're about to back to 2019 levels now. Then of course you have all the supply chain issues, and we'll probably talk about that a little bit later too. But that's hitting everybody hard right now. Yeah, the COVID was a pretty big shock to the industry, to every manufacturer of equipment. But we've all survived, and everybody kind of knuckled down and chipped in and contributed, whether it was the end users or the dealers or the manufacturers or the people in the businesses. Everybody gave in a little bit for the good of all of us.
That's a great segue into my next question, Bill. I was going to ask you about supply chain challenges, because how is the situation today? You mentioned supply chain challenges, which obviously is impacting most industries. There's also a lot of labor shortages, right? Especially in the U.S., which is impacting all the food service chains. So, what's the state of the sector today from your vantage point?
There are shortages everywhere, and every product line. Electronics is particularly difficult right now, microchips and things like that. Luckily for us, we developed a common controller several years ago, and we're rolling that out. And we were able to, pre-pandemic, we ordered a pretty large stockpile of these common controllers for our rollout. So we were in a pretty good position from that perspective, but it certainly is still challenging when, you call the electronic supplier and they tell you they have a 96-week lead time, to get components and parts, and your price is double what it was, a month ago. It's a challenging environment. But everything in the supply chain, not just electronics, all the metal parts, metal prices are going up. Freight is going crazy in terms of gas prices, diesel prices, surcharges. And, we're having to do things that we just are not normal for us, and that has not been normal for any industrial business. That's multiple price increases in a year, surcharges, applying price increases to backlogs or on orders that had already been placed because weren't going to ship for 90, 120 days, and you're upside down on that order if you don't, get some pricing on it. So it's been a highly unusual and difficult environment for everybody, for customers, for manufacturers to try to maintain some level of normalcy. But I don't see it kind of going away anytime soon. And, it certainly feels like it's here to stay for another few quarters at least. And hopefully we can start to see it subside after that a little bit. But we're still in the thick of it right now.
No, Bill, you're absolutely right. I think a lot of companies are struggling with this. And I don't know if anyone has really figured out how to deal with this because it's just so unpredictable. But just from your experience, maybe what are the one or two things that you feel you're doing differently today versus before in terms of how you procure things, how you think about inventory levels and working capital? You mentioned pricing.
Yeah. Well, we were fortunate. We had started a transformation program pre-COVID, and we, during that transformation process, one of the things that you do is you go out for quotes, RFQs, and try to get money from your supply chain. That's kind of gone right now. It's, you're not able to. You're just lucky if you get parts, at any price, as opposed to trying to get suppliers to give you price reductions, because they're feeling they're having the same problems that we are. But what we were able to put in place was the value engineering process during the COVID time period, where we saw that we weren't going to be able to do kind of traditional supply chain management. And we flipped our engineering resources to where we started redesigning components and parts to take cost out of products as a way to de-feature some things and or get multiple suppliers, right? If we were single sourced on a component, we redesigned it so that maybe we could have 2 or 3 different suppliers to give us the flexibility. That's proved to be very fruitful for us during these times, and actually allowed us to continue, to get some cost reductions, to help offset some of the price increases. But it's with redesigning of parts and pieces. And then, you have to understand pricing. And if you don't understand and you don't have analytics around your pricing, people looking at that on a daily basis now, you're behind. And one of the things that we try to do is hold the line on price increases coming to us, just like our customers try to do to us when we give price increases. And that hold the line is a whole process in terms of, if somebody wants to give you a price increase, that has to go through multiple levels of approvals and design reviews and things like that before we accept it. And we'll push that to the limit, and that's been helpful as well. So I think, if I would give anybody any advice, it would be, can you redesign your product or components can you make sure you're getting the accurate pricing and all the inputs you need to know what your costs are, so that you're getting the right amount of margin. Those would be the 2 things that I would really recommend.
No, I think those make a lot of sense, Bill. I think it's obviously easier said than done. Welbilt has done a terrific job of actually implementing a lot of these practices and maintaining both business continuity and actually continuing to improve its performance. Now, even before COVID, there was a lot of buzz in this sector, right, about all kinds of technology disruptions. There was cloud kitchens, or ghost kitchens, as different people call it. Emergence of platforms like DoorDash or Uber Eats, smart kitchens, IoT-based solutions. What happened to some of these trends? What do you think will happen going forward? Did COVID accelerate some of these trends? Did COVID, put a brakes on?
Yeah, no, I think it certainly changed the way some of these end users are looking at their businesses, right? So we saw actually people like Chick-fil-A their business go up during COVID times, right? Their revenues go up because they digitized and did more in terms of their apps and how people can order food and pick up food, and so they really put a lot of effort and time into thinking through that whole delivery process, how you can safely get people food without having them actually physically go into their kitchen. And if you go to a Chick-fil-A now, there'll be cars wrapped around it 2 or 3 times, and it still only takes you 5 minutes to get through. And a lot of that has to do with, how they let people pay and how they have people in the parking lot taking orders. People can do the DoorDash. People can order ahead and go to a parking spot and pick up their food. So there's holding cabinet designs that we're doing for some customers, some innovation where you order the food and they cook it in their kitchen and then they put it in this holding cabinet, and then from the exterior outside you have your phone and you can open the cabinet with a code, with a barcode, and pull your food out, and you're not touching no human beings are coming into contact with each other. There's a lot of that going on, and as you said earlier, one of your comments was labor shortages, and certainly the food equipment or the food suppliers, the McDonald's of the world and Chick-fil-A's and Burger King's are having trouble attracting workers, and so they need more productivity. So it's how can we make their kitchens more productive? And that's where some of our innovation like Kitchen Connect, where we can analyze pieces of equipment and data and do data analytics on flow of information from like a fryer, for example. When was the last time it was cleaned? Does it need cleaned? How many hours a day is it operational? It gives the people running the kitchens a lot of information in terms of how efficient their products are or their equipment is. We can do some predictive maintenance and things like that. So the Kitchen Connect side of things and the automation in the kitchen is really at its infancy, but it's being driven by the fact that labor is hard to find and it's expensive. And so, and the cost to retrain people constantly it's really high. So I think you're seeing, particularly the global strategic accounts, work hard to get more digital and take more people out of the kitchen and do more automation.
Bill, it was very interesting as you were talking about this. It felt to me like companies like Welbilt are transitioning from being traditional industrial companies to industrial technology companies, right? Just given the amount of technology that's going into your products. From your experience, what does it take to make that transition successfully? How do you think about talent and capabilities going forward, right? Because it's clearly very different from what was needed before.
Yeah, so it's a really different skill set, and I think we made every mistake you can make trying to get where we are today. Years of trying different things, but what we've learned is that it is a completely different skill set than the guys that are designing equipment. It's software engineers, it's people who are really knowledgeable on hardware integration of these hardware software cloud, all the different components that go into a connected kitchen, and talent is, I think, the number one thing. We were fortunate to find someone who has a vision for what customers want and how to achieve it, and what you have to figure out, because it can be a huge money pit if you're not careful, but you have to figure out what you're good at and what you're trying to accomplish, and then you have to bring on partners to help you achieve that, whether it's cloud, hardware, software, and then you have to manage it very tightly. So, like, I have a review every couple of weeks with my digital team, just to make sure that we're delivering what we said we would deliver, where we're going, and any issues that come up, because it's a lot of money and it gets spent really fast if you're not careful, and you end up with not having anything that the customers really want, right? So I like to see lots of customers coming in, giving us input, lots of applications working. And then we have metrics where we look at how many pieces of equipment are connected to the software so that we can monitor and provide analytics capabilities. So again, I think the whole industry is at its infancy right now, but it certainly is changing, and it's going to continue to change, and it's not going to go backwards.
That's fantastic. Well, I'm looking forward to the day when I can just program my microwave to cook my favorite dish instead of having to try myself. Let's switch topics a little bit. Talk about yourself. As I mentioned before, you started your career in the United States Navy. And how did you, as a nuclear engineer on submarines, from what I understand, what was that experience like? And how did you make the transition from Navy to the industry? And how did the Navy experience and learnings help you in your career?
Yeah, so I was a young guy when I went into the submarine service. It was really difficult. It was a couple of years of postgraduate work in terms of nuclear engineering and studies, and then 5 years of being on board a nuclear submarine with 150 guys, kind of trapped underwater for 120 days at a time. But you learn a lot, you grow up a lot, but what you learn is how to get along with people. Imagine locking yourself in your house with your whole extended family for 120 days. You either kill each other or you have to learn to get along, right? So you learned a lot of coping skills, and you didn't have to like everybody, but you had to learn how to deal with different personalities, and everybody's life depended on everybody doing their job, right? There was no joke, when you're out in the middle of the ocean and you're sleeping and your buddy's on watch, he's got to make all the right calls to make sure that you get back home. And so from that perspective, it gave me a lot of process orientation, a lot of quality control background, and belief in different quality metrics, and then just how to judge people and work with people, all kinds of people. And and it was just really invaluable when you start getting into an industrial equipment business and the industrial side of things, and you're managing people and processes. And I actually, the first job I had out of school, out of the Navy, I was a plant manager, and I didn't know how to organize it. And I just organized it like a submarine, and it worked, and kind of went from there. But I've done a lot of turnarounds in my situation over the years, different situations, and probably a dozen turnarounds. And everybody's like, wow, it's a pretty stressful environment. And my retort to that is, you don't know stress until you're, a couple thousand feet under the ocean and driving around. That's stress. This is enjoyable work. So that's kind of how I got to where I am at. I came out of the service and went to work for ABB, and I spent 10 years there, switchgear, circuit breakers, and transformer businesses. And then, as you alluded to in my introduction, there's different industrial segments, but all along, I like being where we're making stuff, and I like the industrial equipment businesses. I like the people in industrial equipment businesses. I like being able to walk out on the shop floor and talk to folks and interact with people. It's kind of just a blue collar kind of mentality. I really like that about the different industries, industrial groups.
And the common theme, correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, but the common theme across all of these different roles you've had is transformations and turnarounds, right? That's the kind of you've gone into situations that needed fixing, and you've done a fantastic job of actually turning these companies around and making them much better than when you came in. What are maybe the top 3 or 4 learnings from that, from doing a bunch of, you said, a dozen transformations or turnarounds?
So I think the first thing is that you got to have big ears. You got to go in and you got to listen to people. Every business I went into, they know how to transform. They know what needs transformed. They don't know how to transform. But you were at McKinsey for a long time, and people paid you a lot of money to come in and listen and ask questions and put together, plans. Well, you got to do that when you go in as a CEO too for a new company. You got to go in and listen and take stock of the people that are there and value what they have to say, and they'll help you with the roadmap. They'll give you the roadmap, for what you need to do. And then you need to move fast, and you need to move faster than you think that you can and should, both on people and processes. One of the mistakes that I've made over the years, and I've learned through different transformation efforts, is, and even at Welbilt, the latest one, you improve the process and then you take the labor out of it, is kind of how everybody does it. And what happens is it becomes really difficult for the local management to take those people out once they make the process improvement. So they just move them somewhere else. You don't actually save the dollars that way. You're just moving them around the factory. What I like to do is I like to go in and take 20% of the people out of a line, and then do the transformation process with the remaining people, and then it tends to stick more. And people can say, well, that's that may be dangerous, but I've learned over the years that you can take 20-30% out of any process pretty much, and you're not going to break it. There's that much just extra built into everything that we do, and I don't care what process that you pick, they can always be streamlined. And so I think that's a big lesson learned, that after doing this for 30 years, probably the single biggest thing is be fast, get the people out before you make the process improvements, and then make the process improvements, and then they'll stick, and then you'll have your cost savings to get there. And then, hire really good people, hire the talent. Don't be afraid to upgrade talent, because you need, for better process control and better processes, you need good talent. And you got to get rid of the people that are going to block you from improving the business. And I got tons of stories of that over the years where I've made changes, and there's creative ways to do it, but in all cases it was the right thing to do. I'd say those are kind of the maybe the main 2 or 3 lessons learned in transformation.
That's very interesting, Will. And maybe zooming in a little bit on the latest one that you mentioned, Welbilt. It's a big company, global company, lots of different brands, lots of different locations. How do you as a CEO keep tabs on what's going on, how the transformation is going across all of these different sites? What's the process like?
Yeah, so I think, that's evolved over time as well. I think the most important thing I can say is you have to be present. You have to be at the meetings. A lot of times I see senior leaders who say they're on the steering committee or their oversight committee, or they're, they're getting an update, but then they don't show up for the meeting, or they're multitasking, or they're not on the Zoom call at all, or they're only on for 10 minutes and they leave. And those actions send a message to the organization that this transformation process isn't important. It's not important to you, then it's not going to be important to them. And I can tell you that for 2+ years, I haven't missed a steering committee meeting at Welbilt, and they go 3-4 hours in some cases, because you're going through every brand and every business, and you're doing it. Now we do it on a monthly basis, but initially we were doing it every week or 2 to make sure that people got the message. And so I think the most important thing is the leadership team has to show up. And if you show up and you prove that it's important by paying attention, asking questions, giving your input, then your organization will take it seriously. And if you don't, they won't, and it'll eventually just die. Then the other thing that you have to have somebody, and typically it's the CFO, who's the scorekeeper, right? And you can't just have the business unit manager saying, "Oh, I saved $1 million here, $1 million there." If it's not showing up in the P&L, we didn't save it, and it just got moved somewhere else. And so, I rely heavily on our CFO to make sure that he's done all the accounting necessary to make sure that the numbers are showing up in the margin numbers and the bottom line. So I think those are the important lessons for driving a transformation process. If you're not going to do that, then don't start one, because you'll just spend a bunch of money and go nowhere, which you've probably seen, over the years with McKinsey, with different successful implementations and not successful implementations.
No, absolutely. I think at McKinsey as well as now at Fernweh, I think one of the other challenges that we see with companies is that they can keep up this momentum for a couple of years, and then things start sliding again. So I guess the question to you is, how do you transition from a transformation program to ways, kind of just the regular way of doing business? How do you take some of these practices that you've launched during the transformation program? Do they become the way of doing business going forward? How do you make sure that the impact is sustained over time?
Yeah, and again, I think that you got to have a good scorekeeper here and make sure that the improvements are hitting the business. But the processes that you're putting in place for those 2 years are your processes. You got to make sure that they get embedded in the business, whether it's the way we measure productivity, efficiency, the way we track supply chain improvements or supplier cost reductions. And you got to have that part of your DNA, right? So, I broke part of the transformation reviews up into a couple of different segments. One, just to look at purely supply chain and suppliers. And so I have a 30-minute meeting once a month with every business unit to talk about suppliers and price increases and what we're doing on VAVE and those types of things, right? And again, it's part of the DNA now, right? It gets built into their budgets, but it's not just a number in the budget anymore. Now it's a series of projects in the budgets. Hey, here are the 10 different initiatives we're going to work on to achieve $1 million cost reduction. Not, we're going to achieve $1 million cost reduction. We don't know how. We typically like to see the funnel 1.5 times the number. So if they have $1 million cost reduction in their budget, we like to see them working on $1.5 million worth of opportunities, because things fall by the wayside, and we want to make sure they hit the number. So we typically like to see enough projects that will get us at least 50% more. And in some cases, we're positively surprised when we get more than what we budgeted for because of that. So I think that's the key. Those are the keys.
Understood. No, that makes a lot of sense. I wanted to switch kind of topics again. Tell us a little bit about what you like to do outside of work. How do you blow off steam? What do you do?
Yeah, well, it's over the years I've tried different things. I tell people I'm a recovering engineer because I wasn't very good as an engineer. I play a little bit of golf, but I do a lot of big game hunting, and so I like to travel the world and see different places and hunt different terrain. So whether it's Alaska or the Northwest Territory or Mexico, I like to see the world that way. So.
Fascinating. I've never tried my hand at hunting, but I've seen, Bill, some of the pictures that you've posted online and other places, and clearly you've had a lot of success at that. So looking forward to...
I'll take you on a trip. I'll take you on a trip someday, Shaker.
Looking forward.
Hopefully not get you eaten by a bear.
I'll stay close to you. So make sure I'm safe. So to close here, Bill, maybe come back to your career for a second. You've had a fascinating career, a very successful career, many prestigious industrial companies. What's next for you once Welbilt if the transaction is done?
Yeah, so I'm fortunate. I'm at that point in my life where it's about I get a chance to give back to people and help people be successful. So I think I'm in my prime in terms of being a CEO and the things that I do and what I've learned over the years. I'm fortunate enough to be in a financial position where I can work with the people I want to work with and do what I want to do with the people I want to do it with. And so for me, I think, I have at least one more run in me as a CEO and doing a stint with either probably a private equity group and working with a bunch of people that can benefit from my experiences.
Excellent. Well, on that note, thanks again, Bill, for joining us today. What you've shared is truly fascinating. Hopefully, our listeners will take away a lot of interesting learnings from this discussion. So really appreciate your time. Thanks again.
All right. Thanks, Shaker. Enjoyed it.
Thanks for listening to Fernweh Insights. Please visit Fernweh.com for more podcasts, publications, and events on developments shaping the industrial and industrial tech sector.